Hello class. On today's lesson of pathogens, we're going to be looking at the plague. As you can see, I've used a black background because one of the nicknames of the plague is the Black Death. And as I proceed with my class and my lesson, I will explain to you why this is a nickname of the plague, the Black Death. So the plague is spread by the Yersinia pestis. This is a zoonotic bacteria that is found in small mammals and their fleas. So the small mammals include rats, mice, small rodents, sometimes dogs. The fleas that are found in these animals are the carriers of the plague. And the plague can stay for a very long time in these fleas, for a really long time before it spreads to humans. And so the description of the bacteria is that it is a gram-negative bacteria that has a coccobacillus shape. It is an anaerobic bacteria, meaning it doesn't need oxygen. It is non-motile, it has no spores, and it is a hyperparasite. So hyperparasite means it can live in both humans and animals, and can also be spread by both humans and animals, which is exactly how the plague is. So there are different types of plagues. We have 3 types of plagues. The first one is called the bubonic plague. So the bubonic plague affects mostly the lymph nodes of the individuals that it has infected. This is the most common type of plague. This is the one that most people will get. And yet this is the one that has a higher survival chance. So it has an incubation period of between 2 to 8 days before it fully materializes. And for this bubonic plague, the bacteria multiply in the lymph node where the bacteria entered the body. So once the fleas bite you, the bacteria gets into your body, and if the first place that they target is the lymph nodes, this is where they start getting swollen, and this is where they multiply in your lymph nodes. So some of the signs and symptoms of the bubonic plague include headaches, chills, body weakness, and swollen, painful lymph nodes. And in the plague, they are called the buboes. So your lymph nodes gets really swollen and really painful. That is the first. Those are some of the signs and symptoms of the bubonic plague. So the second type of plague is called the septicemic plague. This one mostly affects the blood. The incubation period is really not known, but it is estimated to be days after exposure. The thing with the septicemic plague is that it can occur as a first symptom of the plague, or it can develop from an untreated bubonic plague. So that's the reason why even its incubation period is not well known. And some of the signs and symptoms of the septicemic plague are almost similar to those of the bubonic plague. They include fever, chills, extreme weakness, abdominal pain, body shock, bleeding to the skin and other organs, organ failure, and the skin and tissue will turn black and die. That is especially around the nose, the fingers, and the toes. The third type of plague is called the pneumonic plague. This one mostly affects the lungs. So with the pneumonic plague, this is the least common type of plague, and yet this is the most dangerous type of plague. This is because it has a very short incubation period of only 1 day. And for the pneumonic plague, it can be spread differently. So one, it is spread when the bacteria from the untreated bubonic or septicemic plague enters the lungs. That is one way that it can be spread. Two, when a person inhales the infectious droplets coughed by an infected person or animal with it. That is why the pneumonic plague is very dangerous. It has different ways of getting spread into the body. So either the bacteria from the untreated bubonic or septicemic plague develops into the lungs and therefore causes the pneumonic plague, or when someone coughs and you inhale these droplets, or even when a dog or an animal coughs and you inhale these droplets, there you get the pneumonic plague. Some of the signs and symptoms include a fever, headache, weakness, a rapidly developing pneumonia with shortness of breath, chest pains, coughs, and bloody or watery mucus. So the transmission of the plague, it is mostly transmitted in 3 ways. The most common is from the bite of an infected vector flea. This is the fleas that are found in most of the animals around us. So if the fleas have the vector and they bite you, you quickly will get the plague. Second way of transmission is unprotected contact with infectious body fluids or contaminated material. And the third way is through the inhalation of respiratory droplets from patients with the pneumonic plague especially. So disease frequency. Currently, the pneumonic plague is mostly found in the Democratic Republic of Congo, that is the DRC, which is one of the countries in Africa. It is also found in Madagascar and Peru. It is also, we have some cases that are currently reported, especially in Asia and South America. And like I said earlier, it is also found in the rural areas of Western United States. So because of the animals in these rural areas, and where the animals, there's a high likely chance of having fleas. And because once the plague gets into these fleas, the plague can stay in the fleas for a really long time. Like, it can really spread really fast among the fleas, and the fleas can spread really fast in the animals, and therefore it can stay around in a population for a really long time unless the fleas are really taken care of. So that is why we have the frequency also in the rural areas of the US western states. So the plague, as I said earlier, it is a dangerous disease. It has, so far, we have 3 major pandemics that occurred because of the plague. The first one is the plague of Justinia, which occurred around 541. So for this plague, tens of millions of people died and spread really fast. The second and the most common pandemic of the plague is what we call the Black Death. It is what gave the plague its current nickname. So the Black Death occurred around 1346 to 1353, and in this pandemic, about 25 to 50 million people died, and this spread to all the continents, almost every continent. And this is where the body developed some black boils, and like the way it was spread, that is how people got to know that someone had the plague, because of the people that were infected had black boils. And because of how quickly people died, how quickly it was spread, how quickly people died, the plague then got to be called the Black Death. And so these days, that is still the nickname of the plague, the Black Death. But there was a third pandemic that happened around 1855. And this one also spread to every continent except Antarctica. The numbers are still not very clear, but research states, like in some states like India and Asia, about 20 million people died. So it is still spread around, it still went around, but the exact figures for the third pandemic are not well known. So currently, we have about 1,000 to 2,000 people that are diagnosed every year worldwide with the plague. So it is still an active pathogen, it is an active disease, but the numbers are not as large compared to earlier. So the diagnosis of the plague, we have the lab testing for Y. pestis from a sample of pus, bubo, blood, or sputum using a lab-validated rapid dipstick. It is a very quick diagnosis, and you can easily tell if someone has the plague or not. So therapy, as much as the plague is as dangerous as it sounds, some common antibiotics and supportive therapy are effective against the plague. And especially for the pneumonic plague, we said it's the most dangerous because it spreads really fast. And antibiotics that are designed for gram-negative rods can cure it, so long as they're delivered early. Remember, the pneumonic plague only has an incubation period of 1 day. So if someone who gets sick and they have a positive test, they can get the antibiotics for the gram-negative rod bacteria. They can easily get cured and make a full recovery. So some of the preventative measures include reduce the rodent habitation around you. That is, make sure that the area around you is kept clean, free of rats, free of rodents, and those kinds of things. Always wear PPE when handling potentially contaminated animals. You never know if you don't know what killed the animal, you would rather be safe than sorry. So always make sure you have your PPE on. Use flea repellent when engaging in outdoor activities like hiking or camping, just to be on the safe side. And then you need to keep fleas off your pets by using flea control products. You can only control you can only control the things that's around you. So keep your pets free of fleas. That will also help. So keep pets at home free in the endemic areas of your beds. So if, for example, you go to rural areas and you have all of these pets that roam all over, if you can keep them off your beds, it will save you a lot. And then avoid direct contact with infected body fluids and tissue, and use PPE when collecting samples. In healthcare, assume everyone is sick, assume everyone is contagious, so always have PPE and protect yourself. So some of the new data about the plague. So, one, we have no plague vaccine in the US. So you cannot say that you're going to get vaccinated for the plague. There's no vaccine for it, but it is currently being developed. And two, there's a very likely chance that the plague could be used as a bioweapon. This is something that is in the security details. This is something that CDC is critically thinking about and looking into and making sure that there are measures that will ensure the safety of the citizens of this country if at all this happened. So the government is aware, most of the healthcare providers and hospitals and the major hospitals are aware of the steps that they should take in case the plague starts spreading as a pandemic, and how to make sure that as few people as possible get infected. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you so very much. These are my references, and I hope you learned something as much as I did when I was doing this presentation.